Hold on to your hats, everyone. Keyword research has changed forever. We're talking to Dixon Jones of Inlinks today on The Edge.
Your weekly digital marketing trends with industry trend-setting guests. Powered by your digital marketing pioneers, Site Strategics. This week's featured guest is Dixon Jones, CEO of Inlinks.net. Now, here's your host, Aaron Sparks.
Let me tell you about Dixon Jones. He's the CEO of Inlinks.net. He's an international SEO speaker and internet marketing advisor who works as a mentor to founders of internet technologies. He was at the first ever PopCon, as well as speaking in Las Vegas a couple of years ago, as well as other events in the UK and Europe. He's a past TEDx speaker, as well as speaking all over Europe and the US on search strategy and online link building, including keynotes. Let's bring him on. Dixon, how you doing, sir?
Yep. No, hey, I'm doing very well. How are you?
We're very good, very good. Thanks for joining us with this special announcement. We really wanted to get you on as quickly as we learned about what in the world Inlinks is doing. And for all of our listeners, Inlinks is a continued sponsor of the news portion of Edge of the Web podcast. So we thank them very much. Thank you so much for being along for the ride in 2022. Yeah, some big news here. I want to tell everybody about this. Inlinks is the first ever entity-based semantic SEO tool. It uses a proprietary semantic analyzer and knowledge graph to deliver expert-level data for on-page and on-site optimization. Now, for those of you that don't know what entities are, we do talk about it a lot on the show. Entities are named entities are machine-readable topics and concepts such as persons, people, places, things, generic products, what have you. Anything that Google's trying to understand. Each entity can be seen as a cluster of synonyms and relevant references to that subject matter. So the entity also has sub-entities to it, and we do, but we won't unpack everything inside that space. But rest assured that semantic SEO is the coin of the realm now. It's no longer keywords. These are subject matter concepts and supportive concepts. Dixon, can you elaborate on that for our listeners who may have not come across that before?
Yeah, certainly. So, we think that, as you say, keywords are dead a little bit, in that Google has for some years now, for a long period of time, realized that they can't just carry on indexing every page on the internet and then just build up a database of more and more and more and more pages that are about the same thing again and again and again and again. It turns out that when it comes to scale, it's a lot easier to organize the world by the things in the world than it is to organize it by the number of pages in the world, because there's just so many pages. And frankly, there's only so many ways to say, how to tie a bow tie is the example I always use.
Sure.
Basically, as long as you know how to tie a bow tie, it doesn't matter how many times you tell the user only needs to know how to tie the bow tie. So understanding the difference between a tie, a knot, a shirt, a dinner jacket, etc. These concepts then become ideas that they can put down. And if you think about, if I always think about a topic as a Wikipedia article, basically, if it hasn't got a Wikipedia article, it's not really an entity. And that's not exactly true. Of course, Google has their own database, their own knowledge graph, but it's a pretty good way of looking at things. It's a very specific machine readable way of saying that's a map, that's a stairs, that's a hedge, right. And defining that. And when you put a number against that, so a hedge is number M452GS or whatever, then all of a sudden you can have hedge in English, hedge in French, hedge in German, hedge in everything else. And so you can then organize the world around those ideas and say, right, hedge and flower, or hedge and hedge cutters, are semantically quite close to each other. So building the world up that way and is what Google has been trying to do. Doing SEO around that, there's a few different companies that have tried to do that. I think that the way that we've done it is kind of catching the imagination of the industry, and I think we've done a pretty good job of saying, hey, for us as SEOs, it's not so much about understanding all of that. What it's about is, how do you write content that Google is going to see is authoritative around a particular subject? And that really all comes down to knowing those associations between entities and and what to talk about.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And just to be specific, there's a certain number of companies that are utilized for marketing research tools to be able to empower agencies and SEOs to be able to conduct that research. Research has been a challenge here as of late because we've moved away from the keywords and volume. We'll get that into a second here, but understanding the relational map, the neural map that Google is creating of these subjects and these supportive subjects and the proximity of those particular relations, we're starting to come closer. And with software such as yourself, we're starting to actually able to understand what and how Google is learning about these different topics. So we're in a whole other world, and it's almost like the companies that are forging ahead, blazing a trail into research and an understanding of the neural map. They're kind of shining a light, like a flashlight, into a room. We're finally seeing something wholly different. Although Google's been working on it for the last 15 years, we are now catching up or I should say you are catching up in the marketing research space where we can start really kind of mapping concepts and subjects together.
I'd say it's a keyword research space specifically, really. So I think myself and Fred, so Fred's the brains of the outfit, as in the programmer, and has been thinking about this for longer than I have. And we kind of sat down and said, look, keyword research, or user intent, Google is always saying user intent is the key. What is the user actually searching for? The problem is that all of the research that was on, the SEOs had on that was, and you still look at the Wikipedia article, at least today, but hopefully they'll change it in the next few weeks, is saying that, user intent is just about, whether a person is looking for an informational search, a navigational search, or a commercial search, or something like that, or a local search. And they put it into 4 or 5 different things. Well, user intent is nothing to do with that. If I want to know about a house, I may want to know about decorating a house. I may want to know about buying, selling, renting, rebuilding, mortgaging. These verbs are the things that are really driving user intent. And that's how we got to this launch that we've just put out this week, is trying to understand that. And because we've got a natural language processing algorithm of our own, we've got this ability to then dive into what people are searching for and analyze that and break it into clusters. So that's kind of, we've got this new approach to keyword research. So we can go into it more.
Absolutely.
But I don't want to go off on one.
Well, we're about to go down a rabbit hole here. I mean, this is the pivotal moment here. What we're talking about is a software that's actually pulling in those unique verbs to the subject that you're actually looking at. So it's no longer an axiom of who, what, when, where, and why. I mean, that's very similar to what Answer the Public was doing, is that it would have those breakout forks in the road and be able to have those systemic roots there of concept. Right. You're actually patterning real time against key concepts and able to actually see the nuances that are not repeatable, not the structure that you'd be slotting in certain keywords. This is all organic from the APIs and the actual language processing you have. So you are actually seeing unique patterns within and then defining clusters from that.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, the process that we've going through actually is I bulleted it down because I haven't actually sort of talked about this on the blog post, but thought it might be interesting.
Absolutely.
Give you something for an exclusive. So what we're doing, before, our keyword research was, so if you wanted to write some content around Indy 500, we were talking about Indy 500 before we came on air. So you then, what we'd do is we'd read the top 10 web pages that are about Indy 500, run our algorithm over that content and break it down into the underlying topics. And we'd say, right, you better talk about racing, because your competitors are talking about it 5 times or 20 times on the page. You better talk about Indianapolis because, they're talking about it this number of times. So we had that information of what topics you needed to talk about, but that's not really keyword research. It's got some ideas. So what we've done this time is we've really gone and turned that into a keyword research tool. So you start with Indy 500. We get that list back, which is unique to us anyway. But then we feed that into Google Auto Suggest. So we pilot Google Auto Suggest and say, right, we've seen that racing is an important thing. Let's throw that into Google Auto Suggest. So then we can see that racing is all connected to, well, we can probably get it up on screen and we can see how we've pilled out, different underlying topics that are related to racing or related to each. So, in fact, if you like, we'll just hang on a second here, and I'll pull one up. I'll pull one up for you.
Absolutely. For all of our audio listeners as well, we want to make sure that you jump over to the video that we have as well, because we're going to be showing the screenshots of the software. So go right ahead, jump on in there.
All right. So if you've got the Indy 500, for example, and you wanted to start writing some content about the Indy 500, then before we were able to tell you, you want to talk about Indianapolis 500 and Marcus Ericsson and racing and auto racing, etc. There's a bunch of entities here, and you can have a look at any one of those entities and see synonyms of a word and related topics of a word. But that ain't nothing compared to the keyword research that we can do now. So what we've done now, by throwing all these ideas back into Auto Suggest, by clustering them, we've been able to build out topic clusters based around keyword research. So we can sit there and say, right, okay, the total volume of keywords that we may have is well over 1 million people looking at the content. But essentially, around the phrase Indy 500, there's probably about 275 different keywords, and nearly 1 million people interested in that sort of thing in a month. And so but we can say, right, if you're going to talk about Indy 500, then you want to talk about the drivers and Indy 500 Indianapolis and the Indy 500 schedule and the Indy 500 bronze badge. I'm not American. I don't know what the bronze badge is, but I'm guessing it's something important. Or the snake pit.
Right.
And then, I mean, these are not things I would have come across, and so some of those are sort of high relevance. But then when you get down to Marcus Ericsson in the Indy 500, then you really want to talk about his salary. They want to know about his success role and the fact that he's the most successful IndyCar driver. And then, how to get into IndyCar. These are things that are related
and
to.
he also just won. So I was going to actually very important there.
I wanted to point that out. It's like we're 3 days out after the Indy 500, and Marcus Ericsson's also already what was it, like number 2 or number 3 on your list there? So
okay,
absolutely.
Yeah,
so
you're super fast.
So as a pause here is that we're also looking at the topicality of this. This is trending right now. So you're pulling in data that's not 30 days, not 90 days.
It's a good
old.
point.
You're pulling
because we've been basically feeding, using Google to feed our insights. So as a new person comes into the system or a new idea comes into the system, that's obviously going to change the search results, which is going to change the focus on what you want to do moving forward. So
I bet he would not have been on your list a week ago.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely.
There you
not.
go.
Which is really important, is to be able to actually have this running somewhat regularly based on, and so you're mapping your content structure, mapping your content plan, is that you should be diving into this depending on your industry, depending on your pursuit of key topic. You should be diving into this with somewhat regularity so you can see more anomalies that may very well be a gap strategy that you can actually capitalize on as well. Sorry, as a side.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, and things are going to change over time. I mean, from our point of view, there's also the question of when do you decide that Expert Indy 500 is a separate section on a page, or when do you make that a completely different page or a completely different section on your website? There's still some questions around that kind of information.
Yep.
But it turns out that no one's interested in the phrase Expert Indy 500. They are, however, interested in the phrase the race, the Indy 500 race, or the Indy 500 schedule. That's a big one. So they want to know about TV questions and
If I could actually pull this over to the side of the road for a second, you're also showing a priority association as well. So you're looking at volume, but you're also looking at priority. And how do you actually calculate the priority? Because you actually have a stack in the columns. You've got keywords, volume, CPC, and we're all kind of familiar for the SEOs in the audience who have been doing keyword research. You see that, but the prioritization, we were also, we're experienced with keyword difficulty, this, that, and the other. But tell us why you're prioritizing that way.
Okay, so the relevance formula is, or priority formula. The priority here is. I mean, that's a combination of your content and what your competitors are talking about. So what we're doing here is, instead of just saying Indy 500 is important as a phrase because it's got lots and lots of volume or lots and lots of value, what we're doing is looking at the topics that your competitors are talking about. So in order to make this, we've analyzed the 10 pages that are ranking for Indy 500 and analyze them. So we know what IndyCar.com's been saying. We know what ESPN's been saying, what Mark's, so there's a few pages here from ESPN. So we've been pulling out that kind of content. So the keywords and the priority here is based around real-time information as well. So, because Marcus Ericsson he's up there, we've given him a score of 77%. It's because he's just won. All of a sudden, if you're going to talk about IndyCar, all of a sudden he's much more important than talking about just Indy 500 drivers, which is another topic cluster that we've got that you could talk about. And so that's kind of one side of things. We're getting these clusters of keywords so that you don't just randomly put in your topics within a bit of text. You can say, right, I want to talk about these keywords in this paragraph and this or in this page and this section. But then we've also got this other bit called user intent. And honestly, in a way, this is the most groundbreaking part of what we're doing, because, as I say, everyone used to think of user intent as, navigational or e-commerce or whatever. But now when you think about when a user is typing something in about the Indy 500 into Google, they might be looking to work at the Indy 500. They might be looking to watch it. They may be interested to find out how long the Indy 500 takes. They may be looking at where they can find streams of it. They're finding out about the track, finding out about the, what Indy 500, milk drinks.
Exactly. That's so cool.
Were they sponsoring? I don't know.
No, that's a tradition. It's a tradition in the 500. Right. Yeah, the driver actually takes a drink of milk. I think it was an association to milk farmers in yesteryear, right? But that's an ongoing tradition. So unique here. This is the unique footprint here, folks, is that drink is, I was actually assuming, what can you bring into the stadium to drink? But no, this was, it's so unique, the footprint here, because you got go, watch, track, the stream, drink, start, get, run, all these different verbs that are so tied to the subject matter. You would not see drink whenever you're dealing with other races. This is such a unique pattern for Indy 500, right?
Yeah, and it's certainly not something I knew about because I'm a Brit, and
no, but whenever you click on, so for our listeners here, when you click on the particular verb cluster of drink, you'll have topic cluster on a column for Indianapolis 500, the verb drink, and then you have keyword in question of why Indy 500 drink milk, why does Indy 500 drink milk, why do Indy 500 drivers drink milk? So that's a breakout of additional content, so you can start seeing these unique areas that can actually go into and you can add these verbs and these concepts directly into your content plan, right?
Yeah, and it changes the idea of user intent. So so we found when we were looking at this particular example of 1 million people, we found about 37 different verbs really, and so we were saying, right, okay, most of this is related to fresh content. So we kind of got that old style thing of navigational versus promotional or whatever. And so we think that most of the results there's a lot of fresh people that are looking for fresh stuff, particularly now, probably because it's just been on and Ericsson just won. So we kind of got that, but really that doesn't bring it in. If it's only 37% of the results are about looking at fresh content, that means that 63% of the stuff is other things. So that's why these verbs are much, much more useful to break things out and finding out about the schedule. That'll work for next year for sure. The drinking milk thing will work for next year. The difference between watching the schedule and seeing it stream. Absolutely. Stream is a verb that wouldn't have been around 10 years ago and now is in the system. And you can see how many times people are talking about those kind of verbs as well. So that helps to prioritize that. So what we can then do is build a content plan that breaks these kind of clusters into logical sections. So this is the bit that you would actually, before we were talking on air, how do I go and send this to my writers? You cut and paste this content plan basically. And so now we can build a schedule, a plan for a content writer that says, right, we need to talk about the schedule. And when we're talking about the schedule, we want to talk about the schedule. We want to talk about the race, the events, the grid. Whereas when we want to talk about the next section of the Indy 500 itself, we want to talk about perhaps we want to mention Marcus Ericsson and Indianapolis 500. And we've got some other ideas in there, which may or may not be good, like the Monaco Grand Prix, so Indy 500 versus Monaco Grand Prix, or Jimmy Johnson, I don't know who he is, or Juan Pablo Montoya.
Yep.
So you got people in there that probably were involved in there as well. And then, you've got a section about Formula One, which might be appropriate, but may not. So you can choose to ignore the whole content.
Mm-hmm.
And you can sit there and say which sections are important to your site. You can sit there and say, I do want to talk about the schedule. I do want to talk about the Indy 500, and I do want to talk about running in it and the race itself. And actually, you know what? The fact he's won, I better talk a whole section about Marcus Ericsson and his life as well. And that just builds up a content plan that your team can then really get around and flesh it out. And now we know that they're writing about stuff that is going to improve their topical authority with this content. And it's not just based around the numbers and the volume of those numbers. Everything ties back to what you and your competitors have been writing about around that phrase, because it's using Google Suggest, it's using your competitors' topics, and it's using your topics if you had some content there as well. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, you've got a much more flowery but yet focused content plan. And so it's taking keyword research to, I wouldn't say, but to a different place. I'm sure that where there's amazing stuff out there for volumes and cost per clicks and tools that will do that. But this ability to then put it into, meaningful clusters hasn't been done before. It
has not, and the content plan is very actionable. And in all transparency, we've been using this software for years, working with our writers to be able to guide their writing, and it's fantastic what we've seen as we've been able to prune and preen off certain topics and really zero in on what we're trying to talk about. Interesting enough is that we did want to make sure that our listeners and our viewers see the ability and know the ability to be able to select certain topics and keyword intent and be able to remove them off. So you can actually, you don't have to be in a gravitational well towards something that's topical. You can preen that off and be able to actually go after a particular content plan that you have.
Absolutely. So I think that's important, because all we can do is suggest what's going to be topically important, but your business is not our business. And so the AI is coming up with suggestions and ideas, but you have to decide at the end of the day which ones are the ones for you. Mm-hmm. The other thing that you can do, though, is you can change the underlying set, because we kind of by default, if you want to be there for Indy 500, we take the 10 web pages that are ranking for Indy 500 in any particular time, or the point at which you ask. But, it may be that, one of those was very fundamentally wrong. It might have been, about the winnings today, but you don't want to write about that. You want to write about the Indy 500 over the last 500 years or something like that. So you could then take that page out and put another page in for us to analyze instead, which would have the effect of changing the balance of those topics a little bit and just changing the slant of what it is, that the focus that you're trying to get across to the user. Mm-hmm. So that would mean that you may not rank for, Indy 500 2022, but you might start ranking for historical Indy 500 history or something like that. So by changing the underlying topics, you effectively change the whole of the research.
Absolutely.
And get stuff that's going to be more relevant to what it is that you're trying to achieve.
We took that to heart, and as we've kind of improved our content strategies, customizing the initial layout of competitive headlines or competitive pages in the SERP is always a must, is that you go through the process of honing your keywords, but then pivoting around to the SERP analysis and hand-picking certain individuals, that because we did one a while back for some Microsoft products, not for Microsoft, but for a company that sells the products, and we were banging up against Microsoft, in 6 out of the 10 SERPs, and said, no, we don't want to compete about the product. We want to compete against the vendors or the brokers of those products. So we started to clean those out, and as soon as we locked and loaded with those true competitors, the analysis changed, the hierarchy changed, the extract that was happening from those pages were populating a new topic structure that was much more valuable. So it's the start of the equation, but you still have to get hands in there and dial and hone your target a good deal, making sure that you're writing explicitly what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. There's another thing in there as well, in that, occasionally people block our bot. So you might find that, they've put the maximum blocking Cloudflare block on it and stuff. But if that happens, then you can also just cut and paste any content and put it into the system, and we'll read whatever you tell us. So if they won't show us, maybe they'll show you, and if they don't show you, then they haven't got a web page. So so they can just put content in there. That will also mean you could also, in theory, put in content from a PDF file, or put it so you could do research papers as well if you really wanted to work on this thing. I think the thing that's changed for us is understanding user intent by verbs, and it just takes the whole of understanding what the user is trying to get to and being able to answer their query to a whole new level. And it's going to be interesting to see what other people have. I got some interesting quotes from
what's the SEO industry saying about the software?
So I had a few. I got a few here actually, because I've been doing demos and I'm putting together a press. So guy in Spain, Nestor Vasquez, he said, "Thank you, Dixon. The new release is really powerful. In other words, it's insane. If you'd really like to write about this, I'd like to write about this guy in Spanish. Can I have access?" So yeah, basically, yes, you can. If you're going to write about it, that's fine. Not a problem. Grant Simmons said, who's over on your side of the way? He's basically on the West Coast, an SEO that's been around forever. He tweeted or put on LinkedIn, I can't remember. And there was rejoicing in the hills, very excited about this, and how it can drive support, proper site building structure. And then a guy in South Africa, he just came out with, I did a demo with him and showed him all the tool, and he came out with, "Holy crap, Dixon, that was an incredible call. You're a totally amazing, fascinating brain. I'm utterly gobsmacked about what you and your team have built. It's a bloody work of art." So that's the kind of, when I get that kind of feedback, I sleep a lot better, because I think that we were pretty sure we were on the right track. We knew that nobody was really doing keyword research or topic research really in this kind of way. They were sitting there saying, right, these are all the words in the rankings, and this is the volume, and this is the cost per click in Google Planner or some version of that. And it's coming out with a list, but Indy 500 and Indianapolis 500 are the same entity.
Yep.
You don't, Google doesn't need you to say both those words to know that you're talking about the same thing. So, of course, it then comes out with just the same list of words in different orders, or adding an S here, or, and that in itself doesn't give context. It doesn't give you clustering.
Nope.
It doesn't give you user intent, and more importantly, and it fundamentally doesn't help you to mold your business. It basically says, use all these keywords, or basically write a page with this keyword and then this keyword and this keyword, and you're just spamming. Actually, you're doing the writer's head in as well, because you give them, if you tell the writer to write 50 pages on Indy 500, Indianapolis 500, Indianapolis 500 race, Indianapolis, just on its own, that's not really going to excite them.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And this is not TF IDF. This is not.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We have none of that going on at all. No, absolutely none of that. It's literally taking concepts of reading a page of text or Google should suggest, and understanding the underlying verbs and entities, and then helping the writer see which ones are topically most important in their context, because we're seeing, what the competition are writing and also what they've been writing as well. So
it's been a wonderful thing, and I got to say, from my own personal testimonial, it's been night and day difference for how we guide our writers. And you're right, is that if you're trying to employ your writers to be able to write to frequencies of keywords, their heads is going to explode, because you can only say so many things, so many ways. But if you're actually giving a hierarchy of structure of talk about this topic with, here's a cluster of information that you can use. I mean, it basically writes itself, not taking the writer out of the equation, but it's so much of an advantage for writers. Our writers have valued it year over year over year, and we're getting them focused in the performance of their pages, not just hitting a particular term. So that's also the other side of the equation. And a lot of times in your SERP analysis, or I should say your domain analysis, because we're just talking about keyword research and
it's just part of the tool.
It's just part of the tool,
yeah.
and you can actually see your own ranking potential of your domain with your different pages. You roll out schema against target pages, and Inlinks is a lateral linking tool set. So I don't want to bypass that, but obviously the announcement here has been around the keyword analysis, and it truly is unique.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I mean, genuinely, we think it is. And from our point of view, it was an important story to write. It's an important part of the SEO journey. I think, 10 years from now, all SEO tools, keyword research may be done this way. Hopefully by then we'll be light years ahead, but you never know. It's not a static game. It's not. This industry, tools develop very, very quickly, and I suspect that this will put us on the radar of a few more people. And I relish that. I've been in SaaS for a fair while now, and I'm starting to learn that there's no point in. You should celebrate when your competitor does something good, not go Harley crap, because everybody's just trying to innovate. I think the ones that find it really tough are when it's led by the marketing person and they haven't got, the developers are just employees. I think that becomes really hard. Luckily, I've always been involved where, the major shareholders have been the development team, and I've been the marketing mouthpiece rather than the actual brains of the outfit. And that's kind of the same here, really. I think if you don't have that, then you can ask somebody to build something, but once they've built it and you paid them, then every time they do a change, they're not doing what they want to do. They're doing, can you just fit this in? Can you just fit this in? And I've seen so many SaaS tools that have had that problem, unless they can buy in a full-time dev team, right, then they find themselves having to, beg for, can you just change this? We made a UX error here or whatever. And that slows things up. So it's not to say that we don't have that problem as well, because there's only so much you can do, but at least our team are, wedded to Inlinks.
Absolutely.
I
fully
love
bought
it.
and you have that history. You founded a global ambassador for Majestic, and if people don't know what Majestic is, a fantastic link analysis software, one of the top on the planet. So be proud of that. But you have experience in the space of not only. We talked to a lot of SaaS companies that were agencies that built a software because nobody else had it in the industry. And we have seen for 2 decades the need for different tools, and not one tool would ever do everything that we needed. So, I'm literally a tool hoarder to that degree. But you've seen...
You're not alone on that.
No. It's a terrible addiction I have. But you've seen platforms come and go. You've seen the evolution of SaaS companies, SaaS marketing research firms, and rank tracking firms. You've seen them innovate over time. What would you give as recommendations as you've done it yourself to these other companies? Not so much trade secrets, but guidance factors, because you have been a bit of a senior in that space. Where should they be going with their own team? You're talking about internal dev teams.
Well, there's a couple of things that stand out as things I could answer. I think the guiding KPI or metric for any SaaS is monthly recurring revenue. That's got to be going up, basically.
Absolutely.
So if you're selling $10 one week, you need to sell $11 the next week, and keep it going in that direction, and you're okay. But I think that beyond that, a lot of SaaS businesses think they need millions of dollars to start up, but really they need less than they think to do it. They need to get a rinse and repeat formula that is making sure that their product is consistently improving and their voice is consistently getting out to their audience. And those are the only things that you need. Of course, there are occasions where you need to be first to market and you need to hit the market and go running. But the honest truth is in the SEO market, the tools are out there. It's not as if we're building the first ever SEO tool. We've got to iteratively do things that are, that are different to the tools that have been out there before.
Yep.
We need to cover the, they've got some hygiene kind of features that you need to have in a tool for people to say, I've got enough to stick with this tool. But, coming out with new ideas and new methodologies doesn't need money. It needs brains and programming skills. So those are the two things that you need. So my job as the CEO at Inlinks has been to make sure that Fred has not had to talk to anybody and does not have to do anything except program. So he's CTO, I'm CEO. He owns more of the business than me. And my job is to keep all of the crap off of his plate.
There you go. So
that he can get on with it. What I don't need is, what he doesn't need is, suddenly to be delivered 10 developers, 2 of which are good and 8 of which are going to need hand-holding all the way through. And then, running that team of developers and then, having a system that suddenly has to, deal with 1 million customers a day instead of, 20 customers a day. And we can increment on these kind of things as the money comes in. So the job is to say, okay, I don't mind if I only made $10 today, as long as I make $11 tomorrow, and as long as that $10 isn't costing me $20. So I've got to get to a profit, and that can be done, with not very much money. $10,000 a month, and it's covering your base costs, and you can get to a certain point. From everything from there on in, the only advantages of getting heavy amounts of investment are, one, you grow quicker, you get that line going up faster, but it comes with a massive penalty, a massive problem for the founders. If and the last chapter of Fran Fishkin's book, you can see it if you're on the video behind me. There's Lost and Founders sitting there behind me. The last chapter of that is Rand and investors, and it's a really interesting chapter. It suddenly realized why having an investor suddenly changes the dynamics, and not necessarily for the benefit of the founder. Absolutely. The founder wants to invent. The founder wants to develop. The founder, as soon as he's got, he or she has got, 50 employees, that founder is not doing anything apart from managing employees and just managing office politics, So, and certainly after 100, that's the whole ball game. Yeah. But there's so much you can do at that innovation level as you're building a business. Someone will buy you out at somewhere, I'm sure, if you like. But the game is to have that MRR profitable and grow, and that doesn't need millions usually.
You got to stay in pocket so you can be as pure as possible, and they're also serving the needs for the customers. Yeah, you don't want to sell yourself with also FOMO of our tool doesn't do this, so let's pack that in. I think we're finding ourselves in the space where not being a Swiss Army knife is actually much more of an advantage. And yourself, as well as Jason Menard with Calicube, you both are demonstrating unique specialty tools as opposed to one tool to be able to serve an entire audience. And that is also truly different than the regular SaaS marketing.
And that's exactly what Majestic did differently as well. In that, Moz tried to go off into an all-in-one tool. Ahrefs has very successfully got into an all-in-one tool. Sure. Majestic stuck with links, and said, right, we're not going to try and do rank check-in and all the other bits, but you can log in Majestic and use Google Search Console. So you've got rank checking in there for Google Search Console, but you haven't got the Ahrefs style kind of we'll track every word under the sun kind of stuff. Right. But that's allowed them to really focus, and so where they've gone unique is they're the only people that will show you second, third, and fourth tier links. So you can sit there and say, right, show me all the pages that link to the page that links to the page of this page. So nobody else can do that, and you can show it in a big graph, and that's really powerful for spotting PBNs. It's really powerful for seeing why this page that's got a link to you seems to be so strong, and it's only when you see that that's because Forbes has linked to it, or the New York Times or whatever has linked to it in a major article from somewhere else, 2 or 3 clicks back. So they've been able to go deep, and that's kept them very much in the game without having to grow to a point at which it becomes painful. I'm out of Majestic now, so everything I've said that in the last 4 years since I've left, I don't know if that's true anymore, but certainly when we were there, the joy of Majestic is that we loved the link, being able to crawl and do the link graph. And I think with Inlinks as well, we love this approach, this semantic approach to it, and everyone in the team kind of gets it. Jeannie heads up the knowledge graph, so she loves language, and then she gets alarmed when you've got racing, say in the Indy 500 topics, and it comes across horse racing, for example, says that's not right. Why did our NLP get that wrong? We should have understood the context of racing here, and we'll dive in to fix that kind of thing. So everybody's got their specialism within it. And we know that there's not that many people. I mean, I don't know if I hope Jeannie doesn't go for another job, because there can't be that many people out there whose job is I manage the knowledge graph. That's kind of a pretty specialist kind of thing to do. So
you got some passionate people there, and that's also a key element for success, is making sure that they're bought in, they're passionate, and they're focused. So congrats on that growth, and congrats on the announcement and the update to the keyword research and topic analysis tools. We're certainly a huge fan, like we've said over the years, and we wish you nothing but the best here, Dixon. Thank you so much for your time. Any final thoughts of anything that we may be seeing in the future? Have you thought about this, or are we done for now?
Yeah. Well, so the thing that's annoying us now is that our content plans now are still giving information at a page level, and when we haven't made any help to you, you've got to decide for yourself whether to write about this section in the page or whether you should set up a new page for it. So we kind of, what we want to do is to do this keyword research, this content planning at a site-wide level, so you can sit there and understand your whole website and see where you've got gaps in your knowledge within your whole website as opposed to within the individual page. So we'll see what happens with that. And then, if people haven't tried it, inlinks.net, just try the free account and see what you like.
Absolutely. So we'll wrap up this one with a quick link. Go over to edgeofthewebradio.com/Inlinks, INLINKS. You get your free account there to be able to jump in and be able to see what we're talking about here. Certainly watch the screenshots on this video, and certainly reach out to Dixon. He's very responsive when it comes down to the tool, what they're developing, and you can even chat with the founders and the developers there right inside the app. So that's a bit of transparency that you don't get regularly with these SaaS tools. So kudos for that, Dixon. Give Fred our best and congratulations. And now we can take a little bit of a break, right? He doesn't have to be going as fast as he was over the last few months.
He's on holiday next week. So if you try and use it next week and it breaks, I can't fix it. And then after that, I go for 10 days on a boat up the Danube. So I don't think the internet's going to work either. We got to go on holiday. And in Europe, we do holidays. I think the legal minimum in the UK is 4 weeks holiday a year, so plus public holidays, and we got 2 public holidays in the next 2 days as well for the Queen's Jubilee. So
very good.
We'll be around when you're ready.
Absolutely. So
when we're ready,
when you're ready, exactly. It's on your schedule. Thanks so much, Dixon. Congratulations, and we're certainly going to put everything up in the show notes, and we highly recommend. I got to say, last point here, I'm a bit conflicted, Dixon, because we love the tool and we use it so often. It is a bit of a challenge actually promoting you guys, because we know other agencies are going to pick up on what we're expounding. But that's the tough thing running a podcast, because we want to really hold it as our secret sauce here. But
this is why we put Edge of the Web in the client directory, mate. So because there's loads of people that don't actually want to use the tool, they just want to know somebody that can use the tool.
Right. So
if anybody wants an expert to use it, have a look at the Inlinks client directory, and you'll find Edge of the Web's team in there as somebody to pull in.
Thanks so much, Dixon. I appreciate that. All right, so wrapping up, make sure you follow Dixon at Dixon_Jones, and follow us at Edge Web Radio. Also follow Inlinks at Inlinks. Try it out, give them some feedback, because this is what innovation really looks like in the software development standpoint, is digging in and being passionate and being able to find the gaps, find the innovation that we haven't experienced before on scale. So this is the next level of software development, guys. So jump in and give Inlinks some feedback. That said, make sure you check out all the must-see videos and much more over at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. From all of us over at Edge, thanks for listening. Remember, stay safe, stay well, and do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.